What if the secret to your business's success isn't just in your product or your pitch, but in how you empower your people? Today, we're revealing the real strategies behind building a team that shows up, steps up, and drives your company forward, even when you're not in the room. If you're ready to unlock the true potential of your employees and transform your leadership, you're in the right place.
I learned early that one of the greatest assets that I had was happy employees. And because the industry that my business was in, my first business, which was construction, I wasn't the one physically doing the work. I had to have guys that would show up on time, that would value our system and the way that we built things out for our customer. So I would bring a nice presentation, and if the presentation, that's the front end, if the presentation is nice, but then my employees get there late, or they don't really know how to engage with a customer if I'm not there, if I don't have systems in place for us to adhere to, then it doesn't matter how good the presentation or the price was, the value is lost. And I think that sometimes we often don't empower our employees for leadership. And what I mean by that is we micromanage. We want them to check in first without saying, okay, I need you to think like I'm here. And if I'm not around, I need to be able to rely on you to use your instincts, to use your imagination to help drive the company forward. Because the better you make us look, the more I can compensate you. And compensation is not always in money, but it's value over time. The longer you stay with a person, they understand your family, they understand more about you, and you grow together, right? And then there's things that happens over the course of time. That has been lost in today's economy because a lot of people don't stay around at a job long. People are moving and looking for new opportunities, whether it be dollar. Some people will actually leave a job and go down the block and work somewhere else for $1 more. And that's because I don't think that we take the time to empower our employees. And if you're listening today, that's what our conversation is going to be about. How can we maximize what tools and tricks that we can use to maximize and leverage our employees and get the best out of them, and why that is important, and not to look at them as somebody that we own because we pay, or you have to do it my way, but to really foster a healthy environment where everyone is pulling in the same direction and everyone is pulling in the same way. And it starts with you as the leader. You as the leader have to understand how you can go about doing that. My name is NaRon Tillman. This is Walk in Victory, and we sit you at the feet of the masters. Today's master is our brother Rich. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. Been looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Well, when we talk about empowering employees, for the last few decades, you have developed systems because you've brought and sold companies and you understand the value of an employee. Let's talk about the value of having good employee relations.
Well, I certainly agree with everything you said. And I, like you, did not physically do the work in our company. I was dependent on employees meeting with our customers. And you're exactly right. If they don't show up on time, if they don't present well, then it doesn't matter how we market, the customer is disappointed. So we have a credo, I guess, in our company. And my primary company now is an HVAC company. And that credo is we provide exceptional, not just good, not great customer service. We provide exceptional customer service, and we do it through the empowerment and support of our employees. I learned a long time ago that if I expect our employees to provide great service, then I'd better be providing great service to them. And so that's kind of what our culture is built on. It's worked for a long time. You mentioned the idea of employees leaving for $1 and going down the street. I won't say I haven't experienced that, but when you build a strong culture, the likelihood of the employees sticking around is much greater. Now, we've had many circumstances where maybe we were the first or second job for an employee, and they didn't understand the difference in our culture and other companies. They would leave for whatever reason, and in a very short time, we'd hear from them, is there any way I could come back? And when they come back, now they have a real appreciation for the culture that we've built, and they're terrific employees the second time around.
So let's look at that. You allowed them to come back. Why do you think it's important not to hold a grudge? And in some cases, because I'm pretty sure there are cases where there's some cases where you may not allow them to come back. But some people take offense when people leave. Talk about both sides of that coin.
Yeah, I think that there is a tendency to hold a grudge, and we don't take everybody back. If they left for a reason that we were happy that they were gone, then we certainly didn't consider them coming back. But if they are basically a good person and just made a mistake, lots of times it's a mistake of immaturity. They don't know what they don't know, and they don't know what they have. That's easy. If they're a good employee, that's easy to bring them back.
Let's talk about your process of vetting. What makes for you, and in a broad brush, not just your particular industry, but in a broader sense, what makes for a good employee? My grandfather worked in the same plant for 30 some odd years, and they gave him a watch and he got a pension. Those days are over. We're living in a different time, but there's still some values. There's some value systems that are ironclad. So what does those things look like in terms of?
Well, you mentioned values, and that's certainly where it starts. We have very clear values in our company: honesty, integrity, exceptional customer service, and employee empowerment. And we share those values during the interview. We reinforce those values on a daily basis. I'm a big believer that in a small business particularly, I should be connected to every single employee in the company. And I make it a point to be connected in a different way with every employee so that they feel valued, they are valued. A little bit of transparency on my part goes a long way to helping them understand that I'm not just somebody who talks one thing and does something else, that I live my values every day, and we expect them to live those values as well.
How did you become such a student of business, and why, and when did you understand the importance of having happy employees?
Well, I love that question because I got very, very lucky. My very first job was with a company by the name of Trammell Crow in the real estate development business. And I was young, fresh out of the Navy, didn't know much of anything about anything, but I knew I wanted to be in a construction related business. I started at the bottom rung of that company, and they believed everything that I now believe in business. I had been brought up with a lot of integrity in my family, so it wasn't a big reach for me to get there. But the integrity in doing business of that company, which was led by a man named Trammell Crow. Trammell was just a great example. And so I saw how it worked there. I never had a reason to believe that I should be doing it any differently, to be honest with you. Without that foundation, would I have come to the same conclusion? I hope I would have, but I'm not sure I would have. So it was a tremendous start for me in the business world.
There's many things that make up how we show up to the world. How important do you think that your time serving our country helped you in the areas of discipline and understanding where it is that you wanted to show up and land? And do you look back at that time and say, I'm glad that I had that experience because it helped me even as we have this conversation today?
Well, every experience helps you learn a series of things, and that experience did. In some ways, it wasn't a negative experience, but I learned some things that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be in a big organization, for instance, and the military operates in a way that the military has to with a big organization. I didn't care for the impersonalization of the military. And so I served honorably, and but it was not a highlight of my career. I wish I could say now that I am as old as I am, and now that I'm a real big believer in what military people go through and the fact that they put their lives on the line. I was not in combat, so I didn't have that part of the experience, but I have a much greater appreciation for the military now than I did at the time I was in the military.
Okay. So yeah,
But it came at a point where I needed some maturity, and I had no choice but to mature while I was in the military, and thank goodness for that.
so let's talk about maturity. Your first business, similar to mine, I was in the construction real estate field, and for me, there's principles that I learned in building that helps me to help build others. Because I can look at my experience in that field, and I can look at a person if I'm trying to craft a person, and I say we got to start with a foundation. And what are your foundational points? How has your being in that industry, first thing first, helped you see how you wanted to buy, sell, and develop businesses? Buy, develop, and sell. Was it something that clicked? And when did you realize that you had that gifting?
They were the Trammell Crow Company was a great company, and they had a formula for success that I was plugged into, and so I was successful. But I always wondered if it was my success or if it was simply that I was plugged into a formula that would work for a lot of different people. And I couldn't get over that. I think it's called the imposter syndrome. If I'm so successful, why do I feel like a failure? And I even read a book about it way back then. And I just decided that I had a burning desire to be successful on my own. And that's what led me to leave. I left a fabulous job, and I was making more money than I thought I would ever make in my life. It was a great existence, and I still had enough passion to do my own thing that I left that behind. One of the things that company did for me is that they were dealing, or I was dealing with millions and millions of dollars. I was not raised around that kind of those size of numbers. And so they raised my ceiling and my expectations quite a bit. And so where I would have been intimidated and was intimidated at first dealing with big numbers, I lost that intimidation factor. And then, that gave me a level of courage that allowed me to move into the entrepreneurial side of my life.
It's so funny because I went through something similar too. Like I grew up in New York City, what they call projects and stuff. And, we had this, I had this thing about money. So sometimes when we're looking at the contract and I have to sign it off and send it in, I get nervous saying, oh man, I hope I'm not asking for too much. And I had to really, really sometimes psych myself out, and they call me, hey, did you send the contract yet? Then we had fax machines. We would fax it over, and it's way before email. But
trust me, I know all about fax machines.
So now you're helping. You have your mind to own society. I'm gonna you think you 2 or 3 things that you think that they should be considering now, especially in this climate.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the first part of the question.
What are 2 or 3 things that new entrepreneurs, should be considering right now, especially in this climate?
Oh, I think in any climate, entrepreneurs need to think about the next step. You get so focused on your little business and your idea, and you're doing 15 different things every day, and it's exciting, and your employees are motivated. But if you don't prepare for that day that arrives when you need to add a layer of leadership, if you haven't prepared your people to accept that leadership role, then you're going to have to go outside. And bringing outsiders into a small entrepreneurial company can be really difficult. It can be done, but typically someone who is trained in a larger environment, and let's say that you need an operations manager, and someone who is trained in operations likely was trained in a larger company, and they're doing 1 or 2 things and they're doing them really well. When they move into a small company, they are immediately struck by the chaos. And if they've been doing one or two things and they're asked to do six things, for most of them, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. And then your employees are saying, gosh, we've been with you from the start. We've been working our tails off. Why did you, when it was time to promote somebody, why did you go outside and bring a stranger in? And, they may well rebel against that outsider coming in. So that's number one. I anticipate the time that you're going to need to grow your organization. And there isn't a lot of time in small business for preparation. I had the luxury of working through a general manager, and it allowed me to focus on things other than day to day. Later on in my career, I could never have written a book and done this training early in my life. But the book that I wrote allows owners, small business owners, to kind of circumvent that training process, and they can equip their new leaders or their would-be leaders for the role it needs to be filled in a small business. So I don't know that gives you three things, but I just think that's so important. I guess the number two I mentioned earlier is, for us, it always started with shared values. And I believe that you have to define your culture. There's a book that we read together not too long ago called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. It's a very popular business book, but it talks about defining who you are, why you're in business. And I find that businesses who have a clear why and an understanding of that and have communicated it to their employees are far more successful, simply because every decision in your business then runs through the same filter. If we're saying that we're going to provide exceptional service, exceptional customer service, and someone brings an idea for change, then the first question is, does it enhance our customer service? And if we say also that we're going to support and empower employees, then there's the second question. Does this new idea enhance our support of our employees? It's just so easy then to keep focus on the things that made your business good in the first place and great in the long run.
I think that's important. When we're talking about onboarding an employee, when do you start training them for leadership? Is it from the moment that we start to bring them in, we start training them to be forward thinkers, or you wait and see? How was your approach?
Well, like you mentioned in the construction business, most of our employees are field employees. And so they probably did not go to college. We have very few college graduates in the company. And if you haven't gone to college, the likelihood that you've been exposed to leadership training is pretty limited. So maybe what your desire is to be the very best installer or the very best technician that you can be. That's a great aim. But if you haven't thought about leadership, then us talking to you about leadership is probably not practical at the outset. But when we do identify an employee as someone who has some upward potential, then the first thing we do is identify what ceiling it is that they're dealing with. Have they stopped their growth because they never thought about being more? Or do they just not want to be more? Well, if they stopped because they were taught that they couldn't be more, but they think they might want to, then it's up to us to blow that ceiling off and help lift them through that ceiling that's holding them back. We've done that successfully many times, and it's exciting for us. It's exciting for them.
Yes, like what are some of the things, especially in that industry? We'll use, because we both have a history in that industry. What are some of the first things that you look at when you see somebody that has potential? How do you even go about approaching, or how does your team go about approaching them? Because anytime we get called into the principal's office, there's a sense of nervousness.
Sure. We have, I mean, I'm not the only one that has a strong connection to our employees. I model that behavior. It then is picked up by all of our supervisors and leaders in the company, and they model the same things. So, my door is always open, but just because it is the principal's office, I don't have a steady stream of people coming in there, but I reach out to them if I see it. And, maybe you delegate a little project to start with. if they show any signs of interest in doing something else. And delegation is a great way to develop people because you find out if what their upside is. And maybe they bomb. And if they bomb and they don't care that they bombed, then you know that that's probably not a project you ought to take on. But if they get 80% of it the first time, boy, you got something to work with. And so then you can give them a little bit bigger project to do. And when they do that, it's just a continual process. And so we like to give as many people an opportunity to move forward as we can. But the success rate is probably lower than 60%. Yeah, lower than 60% when we try that, I would guess.
Because you have to give a person a chance, and sometimes it may be a maturity issue, or it may be some people don't even like to really step up and be leaders. Like we have role players, and that's why it takes a team to build, right? So we may be seeing something in them that they don't have the confidence that they can do.
I think it was in a book that I read one time, said you've got racehorses and plow horses. And, if you have too many racehorses, nobody gets the work done. They're out patting themselves on the back and trying to one up everybody else. Companies are built on plow horses.
Yeah. So you've championed this thing where you're now going out and you're talking to entrepreneurs and you're doing interviews like this to really leave your mark and your legacy. Why is that important for you?
Oh, it feels good. It's fun. I wrote this book kind of by accident. I didn't sit down to write a book, but it was based on the training course. And because the training course was successful, it kind of got my competitive juices flowing. And once the book was published, it went from, in my mind, being a legacy project that I would just hand out to friends and people that I knew and to employees. I thought, this is a message that needs to be heard. And now that I am retired, I have the opportunity to share that message. It's fun for me. I've always enjoyed public speaking. I enjoy an interview like this. So if I can have this much fun in retirement and do some good while I'm having fun, that sounds like a really good chapter to me.
Let's talk about the book as we come to our conclusion. What's the name of the book? What are some of the key principles that a person who would read the book would walk away with?
The book is called Growing Your Own, and meaning growing your own internal leaders. It is based on a training course that we conducted in our company that was successful enough to where the people I trained now run the company and allowed me to retire. I did not sit down to write a book. In the course of training them, I wrote blogs to the leadership team every 2 weeks. And we then forced them to discuss the blogs. And once they started discussing them with each other, the program really took off. And they began holding each other accountable to the principles contained in the blogs. Ultimately, I did that for 2 years. And frankly, I had shared about all I could share. After 2 years, I was running out of ammunition. And I said, good, it's time for me to step back and let's see how you do. And one rainy weekend, I couldn't go to the golf course and my grandkids were not doing sporting activities. So I read through all the blogs and I said, gosh, I like this and I'm going to make a book out of this. And so I pared the number down from 52 blogs to 35. And each one is on a different principle of leadership. And they are short chapters, 2.5 pages on average. Each one illustrates clearly and in a very simple way the leadership principles that I taught in the course and that made people successful. It is not so much a sit down and read it cover to cover book, although it's a short book. It is a desktop reference, and our employees use it as a desktop reference. And when they have a problem or are struggling with one thing, they may flip to chapter 14 and say, what did Rich say about that? And they still discuss it openly and use it as a reference guide for their leadership.
Besides your organization, what are some of the things, some of the feedback that you've gotten? Maybe somebody may have sent you a note or what is that made you feel like, wow, I'm really onto something?
Well, the differentiation between my approach, which is applicable to small organizations, it's not a big company leadership book, is that it's practical, it's relatable, you feel like you can put the principles in action this afternoon. And then the very favorite review that I got said every chapter is like sitting down with a mentor who wants you to succeed. And I love that thought that people would treat the book as a mentor who isn't in the room, but seems like he is.
Yeah, because that's what you're actually doing, right? You've taken all of your years of experience and you were doing it for your company, and now you've impacted the world. How does that make you feel as a leader, as now a thought leader?
I'm having a little struggle. That's several times I've heard that thought leader term. That sounds kind of pretentious. I'm not sure I'm to the thought leader or the impacting the world stage yet. I'd love to impact the world, but the small organizations that I know I've impacted, it feels wonderful. And so if we can multiply that, it'd feel even better.
Yes, there we go. So
the website for the book is growingyourown.net. I can be reached directly at rich@growingyourown.net. And there's more information about me, there's more information about the book, and there's more information about the training course on the website.
That's important, because I think we're living in a time where small businesses are vital. You know, I talk to entrepreneurs all the time, and what's the funny thing about entrepreneurs? We have a way of turning off the news, and while everybody else is like, oh man, it's going to a recession, and we're used to trying to figure out how we're going to continue to build, scale, and create, right? So, and it doesn't matter if in a down economy, up economy, a person that has that entrepreneurial spirit of always building and creating, it's not going to wake up one day and say, let me go grab my hard hat and get a ruler and go work for somebody else. We're just going to try to figure out how to get it done. And it doesn't matter who's in office or what city we're in. I'm pretty sure, this is my last question, if I came and blindfolded you and dropped you into the middle of Mexico, you'll find a way to build a business.
Oh, there's no question about that. When you're wired that way, you're wired that way. So I agree with everything you said.
There you have it, everybody. I told you we set you at the feet of the masters. All of Rich's information is in the description. Listen, we don't ask you for Cash Apps, Venmos, or any of those things. And I'm not saying anything against people that do that. Our passion is to share great information, but we also ask that you go and support our guests. If there's something that was said, if you're an organization leader and you're looking to scale, you should always be looking to grow. If you're an entrepreneur, you should always look how to replace yourself and open up yourself more revenue. And the way that we open ourselves for more revenue is because now you step back and become creator and you take your stuff to another level. You can't be at the door greeting the people in the back, making the fries and giving the deliveries out at the same time. You have to try to really, really build. And this book is going to help you to understand how to build, not just the why. There you have it. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Your likes, your subscriptions, your shares helps these conversations get to the ears of those who need to hear these stories and to hear these principles and apply them in their life. By now, our 7-day challenge is up. There's a link in our bio and for the 7-day challenge. This challenge is awakening your personal I am, and every day you get a new principle to work on. Is accompanied with a journal, and it's a lead into our book, Awakening I Am, as we create leaders in this digital or AI world. So we thank you for your support. Don't walk with your head down. Don't walk making excuses. Walk in victory. Rich is now a part of the Walk in Victory family. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much for having me.